Hey, what's up? It is Rob Payone, aka Crypto Bobby, and today I want to talk about a couple different topics that came up on Twitter that I think are really pretty interesting and generally where my head is at in terms of the market right now, because frankly, things are moving pretty quickly, and it is hard right now to not go slightly insane with how well some things are doing, how meh other things are doing, and depending upon which bucket you're in, managing your own head, managing your emotions, and kind of keeping yourself in check. And so, like I said, these are a couple different topics that I'm thinking about right now based upon some things that were said on Twitter. And so we'll dive into those. Now, the first thing that I think is a pretty interesting discussion in general, and this is around, I think, the narrative or the trend. And so this is from Alan. If you don't follow Alan, I'll put a link to this tweet so you could follow him. But he is on Twitter, and he says, in crypto, the narrative is your friend. They shift quickly. Pay attention to what is newly hot and dive in as deeply and as deeply as you can and as quickly as you can. Many wait until the narrative has been fully accepted before getting up to speed and turns out to be too late. Rotate. And this is a really, I think, interesting discussion. And there's some good parts about this, because I think, when he mentions diving in, deeply as quickly as you can, I think that is, a smart move and a great move in general. But around the subject of kind of these like narratives or these trends and this rotation game, and this is something that I feel like is for those people that are terminally online on crypto Twitter, like myself, or if you are always on Twitter, always on YouTube, or I don't know where else you digest your information. I'm not a Zoomer, so I'm not on TikTok. But if you, wherever you digest your information from in the crypto landscape, there are these trends that happen, and they come typically really quickly, and a lot of times they might leave just as quickly. And there is this kind of like rotation game that some people play really, really well. There are a number of people, and I think Alan does a good job with this, frankly. But there are a number of people that are like always just seem to be early and on top of their shit and know like the next thing that's going to happen before it comes. It's whether it's like ERC 404s or Solana, before Solana kind of had the rebound, and all the people that were really big into a lot of the things around Solana and Solana DeFi and nailed those airdrops. And so I think that like there are all these different types of things that you can kind of be into. And from a narrative standpoint, this is something where, while I agree with the premise of what Alan says, I think that it is very difficult to do this well. I think some people, again, and I think Alan included, can do this quite well. But for somebody like myself, I actually suck at this. Like, me chasing trends, me chasing narratives, I'm horrific at that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about more. Like, this is what I tweeted. I basically said, I'll take the opposite side of this. I think there are people on Twitter that are excellent at finding and being early to the next narrative. If that's you, you know it. If it's not you, you get smoke chasing the trends. In my opinion, having a niche and sticking to it is often enough. And so I'll expand my thoughts, and I'll kind of give both sides of the story here as well, or at least my opinion, because I don't think Alan is wrong. I don't think I am simply right. And the truth is usually, or like kind of there's basically the truth is in the middle, as kind of always, and basically all things within crypto. But I think with chasing trends, unless you are one of those early tastemakers, unless you are like super online, you're always on top of your shit, what tends to happen is you are the one that buys it after it 10 or 15 or 20 X's. And so that can be great. That can be, there might be another 10 or 20 X in that, or there might be another 75 or 80% pullback. So I think for you, you can certainly try to chase the trends. You can try to be the meme online of the rotator. But you probably know there's probably a level of like self, introspection here. You just kind of have to be aware of who you are as a person. If you are good at rotating right now, you probably know that is you. If you are not, like I have the level of self-understanding to know that I am not that person. If I do this, typically what happens is I get smoked trying to chase trends. I'll get into something, I will buy a bag after everybody's talking about it. And then I'm usually the one that marks the top, and then it's down 50 or 70% or whatever it is. And so for me, what I personally prefer is having a niche within the space, really understanding it well and trying to stick to it. And that's what works for me. That might not work for you. That might not work for somebody like Alan. You might be better off rotating. And I'll kind of give like a real world example of this, because right now it's not working out super well for me, and that could change, or I could just be a total idiot. So I'll give the example of as well, like how this is happening, why I think that this is happening right now as well. So how this conversation kind of applies to me. So for me, I like the DeFi landscape. That is where I've made pretty much all my money in the crypto world for the most part, especially since like 2019, 2020. I've just been interested in, for whatever reason, I've been interested in decentralized exchanges for a long time. I remember participating in the AirSwap ICO. I remember, ZRX back in the day, Ether Delta. I worked for my first full-time job in the crypto space before I started Proof of Talent. I worked for like a year and a half at AirSwap. And so that gave me a lot of understanding of the landscape, the goods, the good, the bad, the potential ugly, the great. And for that, it allowed me to also understand what was happening in the DeFi landscape and get interested before DeFi summer. And I did really well on Thorchain. That was like the bag that I have understood the most and was the most appealing to me, because I liked how it brought Bitcoin into the DeFi landscape, which I think was kind of, criminally left out of that world. And so, one of like my biggest bags right now, as well as Thorchain. In addition to that, I really like that use case, and I like Chainflip. Chainflip is kind of I guess you could say, competitor, similar product to Thorchain with some differentiating features. I like it. I think what they're doing and they're building is differentiated enough from Thorchain that it can allow for a successful, basically two successful decentralized exchanges in that cross-chain space. However, I've pretty much bought Chainflip, and it's been essentially a stable coin since I bought it. I bought it in was November, December timeframe, I think was roughly when I acquired that bag. And from there, there have been a number of different trends that have come into the fold. There have been all the layer ones that have ripped. There's been like the SAYs, the parallel EVM world. There's been stacks ripping. There's been AI is kind of the new trend that I really just haven't been on top of. And now I'm having the internal debate in my own mind. And again, this is kind of like my own self-journal in some respects, but like I'm having the internal debate in my mind that, am I stupid for sticking in something like DeFi, even though I know it? Am I being an idiot and not just recognizing that, hey, maybe AI is what matters this cycle? Maybe that's all that matters. And maybe I'm being dumb for not recognizing that and then just diving as deep as possible into that, listening to as many podcasts, reading as much as possible, and kind of, whether it's Tau or Render or whatever it might be, or some smaller bag, I don't really know. But am I being stupid for being in DeFi, which is what I know, versus saying, okay, like I give up, AI is the new thing, I should go into that? Or is that me just being, again, an idiot and then capitulating too early right before some of these trends work out in my favor? And so for me, how am I looking at this? How am I thinking about it? And at this point in time, what I'm thinking of is, I acquired the flip bag for myself. And this is just to give you some of like my logic. This doesn't have to apply to you. Could apply to some of your bags. Maybe it doesn't. But so for me, I acquired my chain flip bag or my flip bag with the intention of, at a minimum, holding that through when the product fully launches. And right now it is in a capped launch. And so it really has insignificant volume. Like the product basically is it's like saying, Uber was a full-fledged product when it was just in San Francisco and not kind of around the globe. Like that's kind of where it is right now. It's doing a couple $100,000 in volume a day, which is incredibly insignificant in the grand scheme of things when you have something like Thorchain doing $150 million in volume a day. And that said, when those caps are removed and there are integrations with a number of aggregators and interfaces, I think that Chainflip will see success. So I want to kind of let my thesis play out. And I am willing to be wrong in the meantime and see if, hey, if I'm right or wrong. And it's tough. It can be a difficult situation to hold on to a bag while everything else seems to be moving. Everybody else online seems to just be crushing it and you are not. But that is kind of what I am doing in this situation. If chain flip launches and does not see success, Thorchain just dominates it, kicks the shit out of it forever, that could very well happen. And I am pretty much positioned in some cases for that to happen. But in that situation in which that happens, that is when I should, I think, reevaluate, hey, is there anything else that I'm missing? But that's kind of when I'm looking at chasing trends, when I'm looking at the narratives or niching down into where I know and what I know. That's how it, for me, applies to me. And that's how I think of these things as time goes. This is another topic for me that I think is really interesting. And you see this, frankly, when people, I think, are bearish on the crypto space or just getting disillusioned with the crypto space. And it is this kind of idea of imposing your desires onto the technology. And so what I mean by that is I think there are a lot of people that invest in crypto and they have this, whether it's idealized or they just have this vision of what Bitcoin is going to be, what crypto is going to be, and what it means. And when it doesn't fulfill that vision, they get bearish on it, or they exit the markets, or they just say, you know what, this failed. And you miss out on a ton of opportunity, in my opinion, when you do that. We've seen it really in multiple cycles throughout time, whether it's somebody kind of sticking with a fork, whether, you're talking about like the Bitcoin Cash people or the Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision people, or you're talking about just people who haven't liked Bitcoin becoming a money versus a store of value. And I'm going to talk about this specifically in regards to a video from Jim Bianco, and I'll include a link below too, but we'll listen to some of this video and I'll talk about why I think this is frankly a not correct thought process or framing.
I am very optimistic about crypto, decentralized finance, Bitcoin as an alternative financial system. I think it's needed, and I think that they've got the right idea. And so the long term, I'm very optimistic about it. And now I'm going to shit all over it after I said that. I think that this, I've been on record on this, and I'll say it again. I think the spot Bitcoin ETF is a giant mistake. And I think, yes, it will produce higher prices. Congratulations. Everybody, you're going to get 60,000 and you better be able to live off that for the rest of your life. You're not getting to $1 million. As a matter of fact, the spot Bitcoin ETF is an admission of failure, is what it is. You could never solve the UX problem. That's the user experience problem with crypto. You can't solve the problems with private keys. So you're giving up and you're saying, buy it in your brokerage account. You're sucking crypto into the current system is what you're doing with this. And you're celebrating that all the boomers are going to buy it through their brokerage account on a regulated product on the New York Stock Exchange. So Jay Powell and Janet Yellen could put and Gary Gensler could put endless rules on this thing and just completely lose the narrative for it. Look, like I said, you're going to get higher prices because you're going to suck in all of this speculative money, but you're going to get to $1 million because you innovate, because you come up with an alternative system, and you're not doing that. And worst of all, you're taking in all of the old saws that I've heard for 30 years with the gold market. Oh, if everybody puts 1% of their money in Bitcoin, it'll go to $500,000. I've heard that for 30 years. If everybody put 1% of their money in gold, and it never did anything. And the problem with gold is it was supposed to be a decentralized form of getting your money out of the financial system. And we sucked it into that with ETFs on gold and futures on gold. And we're doing exactly the same thing with Bitcoin. So I think what we're trying to do in the crypto space by creating an alternative system is good and is necessary. But I think we're giving up. Oh, it's too hard to build a new system. Let's just pump it to a bunch of boomers through ETF accounts and get all the wealth managers to put 1% of their money in it and give me 80,000 on Bitcoin and I'll be happy. Well, like I said, that's all you're going to get out of it. You're not going to get $500,000 out of it or $1 million out of it unless the adoption rate to the decentralized form of this and the adoption rate of an alternative financial system continues, whether it's ordinals on the Bitcoin blockchain, or it's DeFi on the Ethereum blockchain, or it's Jupiter on the Solana blockchain. We could argue about which is the best protocol, but that's the way we need to be going. But to me, this Bitcoin ETF is giving up. It's giving up. It's saying, that terrible user experience that everybody has trying to figure out how to manage their private keys through a ledger and buy Bitcoin in a decentralized format. And maybe even Coinbase is too difficult to do. Well, I'm just giving up and we're just going to put it on the exchange.
Okay, so why do I disagree with the premise of what Jim is saying? And I'm not here to shit on Jim like you shit on the Bitcoin ETF. No, I think you, as always, in everything in crypto, I think you should separate the person from the idea. And so I'm not going to like shit on Jim or anything like that. But I think that this is a situation in which, and I've seen this before with a lot of other people again, but when you have a specific vision for what Bitcoin is or for what cryptocurrency is, and it does not meet your opinion, it does not meet your vision of what that is, then you get disillusioned by it and you get turned off by it. And you might say to yourself, oh, okay, now Bitcoin is co-opted by the state and it's all over because the Bitcoin ETF is that, admission of failure, and we need TradFi to take us to new heights. Everybody should be keeping their Bitcoin in cold storage for the end of time. And, unless that happens, Bitcoin has failed. And I think that is just, you could really dive into a ton of different reasons why this is false. Frankly, like if the Bitcoin network is still working, if you can still keep your Bitcoin in cold storage, if you can still utilize it, the fact that BlackRock is buying a shit ton of Bitcoin elsewhere doesn't really make a difference and shouldn't really make a difference to you. And so I think that there are a bunch of kind of provably wrong things about just what he says that I disagree with. But I think ultimately it just comes back to trying not to think about your desires and trying to shape them around what you think that the industry is. And this doesn't just apply to Bitcoin. It can apply to really anything within the industry. And it's just trying to maintain like a fluid mindset and some flexibility and some malleability around your own opinions. Because if you don't, you can potentially get into situations where you let time pass you by because you haven't adjusted how you think about things. Whether that is in 2013 or in 2017 when people got mad at Bitcoin having too high fees, and because then you had Bitcoin Cash and you had all these different situations in which you wanted the transactions to be minimal and you wanted Bitcoin to be that peer-to-peer cash, whatever it is. I think you just want to be malleable around that. And I think the same thing, frankly, is true for myself at trying to understand that. A big part of just like this channel and me talking on it right now is frankly like trying to poke holes in certain elements. And even going back to DeFi and talking about how I like DeFi, one of the many concerns I have about things is, am I being stupid with this? Am I now looking at like are DeFi now 2017 Dino coins in 2021? Is that the case? That could certainly be the case. And are AI coins the new DeFi coins? Or is this just some type of flash in the pan that's distracting me from what I do best? And the ability to have the, kind of balls to hold through the times in which it doesn't always look perfect, as well as to have that conviction, but on the flip side, potentially pull the ripcord and admit when you're wrong. I think all of those things are really important in general. So this was a little bit of just rambling in general around some of the things I'm thinking right now when it comes to the market and giving my thoughts on it. As of just the entire market as a whole, I said this when we were at 39K after we dipped from the ETF, but I still remain bullish. I have a tough time being bearish when we see the amount of flows that we have, when we see general picking up interest. We see pretty minimal signs of like real bubbly behavior from retail. I think we'll know that when we see that, but having just a tough time saying to not just chill and be, medium to long-term bullish here when you have insane flows coming from BlackRock and Fidelity and Bitwise and ARK and those big ETFs, as well as waning influence from Grayscale and GBTC and a lot of the, reductions happening there. So For me right now, I'm kind of just chilling. I'm evaluating whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, whether I should be chasing trends or sticking to my guns. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like, how would you view this? Do you suffer from similar debates internally? How do you view just this whole situation and trends versus narratives and being early to the next thing or sticking to what you know? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for your time. Crypto Bobby signing out. Hope you have a good one. Peace.